Well, good day, friends, and welcome to Lake Christian. So you might be asking, why is a schmuck like this guy, the guy in the red shirt right here on your TV, computer, what have you, why does he know anything? Why should you listen to me? It's a valid question. Frankly, you probably shouldn't. I just got some opinions, some beliefs, and hopefully I can convince you of some things, reinforce some things, but what it comes down to is pretty simple. Back in my days in Minnesota, I only worked on the radio for a short time, mostly behind the scenes, but I've been a radio geek for a real long time, and I told you I liked listening to Les Feldick, who did Through the Bible, and he was a cattle rancher down in Oklahoma, which is, I don't know where he lived in Oklahoma, but probably not too far from where I am in Kansas, in the Wichita area. And he just read through the Bible, verse by verse, had a little commentary, and I like that style. There's another show that I like that's called Garage Logic, and that was a mostly political talk show. I talked about some other stuff too, but it's all about common sense. The host of the show, Joe Souchere, was the mayor of Garage Logic, a fictional town. He had been a newspaper reporter for many years, had a column, eventually did a radio show. Both were quite popular. I don't know if he's still doing a podcast or not. I don't know if you can find old episodes of the show, but it was a pretty good thing, and I liked it. The idea was, how would you do things differently if you could? And obviously he talked about the real world and real issues, but kind of aside to that was the fictional town of Garage Logic. Well, in a way, that's what Lake Christian is. It's a fictional town. It's it's all about telling a story. And as a born-again believer who has been baptized in the name of the Father, and Son, and the Holy Spirit for the remission of sins, Matthew 28, Acts 2, Romans 6, Acts 18 and 19, you're supposed to live a different life in Christ, and I struggle with that. I have tried to pray without ceasing and to be a good person. Now, no one is good but Christ. I've heard that, but I think you know what I'm talking about. From the earthly standpoint, the best degree you can be, let's be the best people we can be. And that is indeed what I am trying to do, is to be that good person, trying to help others and make a difference. And it's like a pond with ripples. Now again, you're probably asking, what's this schmuck know about anything in my life or otherwise? And again, not a heck of a lot, but I do have a passion. I'm still trying to get this whole YouTube thing down. I mean, let's be honest, I never planned on being the star of the show. I was never looking to do this. This is just something I felt that I had to do, and I probably shouldn't have my selfie stick in view, but you know what, I've already been rattling on, so I'm going to keep going. So anyways, Lake Christian, fictional town. How should Christians live? What should they do different? And I think that's something that should concern all of us. Now, I don't think that there is a one-size-fits-all formula. Different people, they have their walk, and in different ways and in different times, different things happen, and okay, that is bugging me, but I have to go with it. Anyways, get it all figured out eventually. Anyways, so my story, the story I'm trying to tell, is basically, I've dreamed all my life since I was a young man. First of all, faith story. I am 3 years old. I was baptized 3 years ago. I consider that my born-again experience. Previously, I would have looked at 16 as my born-again experience while watching the 700 Club. Basically, ever since I started my Christian journey, I've tried to think of how I would do things better, different. I mean, I always have, just in general. Um, but one of the things that I had started doing, 'cause when I was a little kid, you know, I still am dorky, let's face it, but I was always a dorky kid, and I liked to play by myself and imagine scenarios, you know, like I was a police officer and chasing the bad guy and whatnot, and I could do a pretty good imitation of a police siren. Anyway, so here's what it comes down to is, you know, at a certain point, you get too old to pretend. And when I was about 11 or so, I started becoming interested in business. And, you know, right about that time, the Fox network was really just taking off. It was a very small network then, fairly new. It started in 86, 87. And I would have been about 8, 9 when the first broadcast was the Joan Rivers Tonight Show, or the Joan Rivers Late Show, I think it was called actually, was on. And I never saw that because that was, we didn't get the best reception on that channel. Anyway, total rabbit trail, so here's the deal. Telling a story. I've always loved telling a story, and I had this great imagination. When I was 11, 12, 13, I tried getting together with friends and writing scripts for TV shows that we would produce and sell. And, you know, this was before YouTube, way before YouTube, basically before the internet has a practical thing for, you know, like military and colleges were the only thing that was on the ARPANET back in those days. You know, so I started with TV show concepts that I would do, and my intention was, well, if I could write a few good TV shows with a few good friends, and then eventually earn enough money, I'd buy a radio station, and maybe I would do some things and whatnot. And this was before I started my Christian journey. Now, I was born and raised Catholic. I went from this, you know, I didn't feel edified in the Catholic Church, so I eventually left and became mainstream evangelical, you know, whatever you want to call it, non-denominational, etc. I've went to a few different churches over the years, and I went to extremes. I checked out, you know, the kind of the legalist side, and I still am a little bit of a legalist when it comes to some things. But, you know, there's two extremes. There's easy grace and there's legalism. And it's a lot more complicated than that. But you know, I looked at a lot of ideas and concepts, so it's hard for me to buy into somebody who pushes an idea and say, well, you're right and he's wrong and blah, blah, blah. Not so much my thing. I think there is absolute right and wrong, but I think there's kind of degrees where we can agree to disagree and have a different opinion. You know, I think the Jehovah's Witnesses, I mean, the founder of the Jehovah's Witness religion, movement, whatever you want to call it, he claimed to know Greek, and he didn't. He lied. There's a court room testimony, and there's actual proof, evidence of this, that he lied about knowing Greek. So all of his special revelations, I'm sorry, they just were not true. Anyways, so long story short, I've been a dreamer all my life. I've been interested in business and the radio telecommunications business. I was a volunteer with public access when I was about 12 through about 18. And I've tried to launch businesses. I've been more failure than a success, but I've learned a little bit here and there from everything. And I think ultimately, you know, when it comes to business, you need to basically have a lot of money and a lot of staying power to keep open, and I didn't have that. I was basically build it and they will come. Well, so the Fox network came, and before UPN or WB, the 5th and 6th networks that showed up about the same time, I thought, hey, I would like to be the 5th network. I would like to start my own TV network. And here's what I'd like to do. You know, prime time on the big 3 networks, ABC, CBS, NBC, and you know, sometimes I like to go into the history of that and talk about radio history and TV history, and I probably will, but not this video, not in detail anyways. So there was in the late 80s, 86, 87, 88 is when Fox got started. 93, when they got the football contract, is when they really became more successful. More stations picked them up, better signal, better stations. They developed more programming. You know, the rest is history, as they say. Well, back in 95, 96, right as I was graduating high school, they launched two new TV networks, UPN and WB. UPN was the United Paramount Network, which basically is My Network TV. The second network from Fox, in most areas it's probably just called Fox Plus now, and it's just a rerun service basically. And there is the WB, which is basically CW. Now, technically, those two entities effectively merged together, the UPN and WB, and they never quite made the mark that they had hoped. And you know what? There was another network that's now called ION that was called PAX. I believe it was Bill Paxson. I could be wrong on the first name. Sorry if I am. But Mr. Paxson started this network. He owned a bunch of TV stations that mostly played, you know, Home Shopping Club and QVC back before they were one entity. And he was about a faith and a family network, and he had some success. Well, the big three networks had a primetime schedule of basically 21 hours a week. I'm in the Central Time Zone, so 7 to 10 was the network prime time, where it was mostly, you know, entertainment shows. And those shows, I mean, they obviously had news shows, game shows, and reality shows weren't quite as common back then, but, you know, other than entertainment. So 7 to 10 Monday through Saturday, and 6 to 10 on Sunday. So that was 21, actually no, wait, 7 times 3 would be 20, so 22 hours. I lied. See, you can't trust me. I'm a sneaky character, ain't I? Anyway, so I thought, what would I do with 20 plus hours of entertainment programming? A lot of the half-hour sitcoms were popular, so, you know, obviously there were some hour dramas and other types of shows, so you probably had room for up to 40 or maybe even as many as 50 sitcoms, depending upon your schedule and your setup. So there's three networks. Fox came in, and a lot of these cable channels that started didn't produce original programming, or at least many hours of original programming until later on. So it was an interesting time back, you know, when I graduated high school. So I thought, how could I do it? What would I do if I would do it differently? And I've already told you in a different video that, you know, in the different jobs I've done and the different businesses I've tried to start and different businesses I'd like to start, most of which I'll probably never have the money or time to do, but it's still fun to dream. How would I do things differently? Well, a whole nother video that I want to get into is how Christians should live and how we should have more small businesses. And, you know, okay, I'm going to get into this because I can't resist rabbit trails. But in government, there's, you know, there's conservative, and there's liberal, and there's things like libertarian, which is mostly conservative, but the Libertarian Party has this diamond or square shape where there's not only left and right, there's up and down. And if I remember right, up is more totalitarian and down is more libertarian, where, you know, you don't, or anarchical, I'm saying that wrong. Anyway, so anarchy and totalitarianism are the top and bottom, up and down axis, and the right-left axis is, you know, how much, you know, what are your issues that you believe in. And I believe in freedom. I believe that government should be small and responsible to the people. Best government is local government. You know, I just voted in my primary here in Wichita a few days ago. School board candidate I like, and city council or mayor candidate that I like, and the people I voted for, I believe, will be more smaller government and all that good stuff. You know, time will tell how these people actually do what they say they do. But, one can hope. And I would say that if I, king for a day, magic, snap of the finger, whatever, I would like to see it where you had more control on the local level. If I could, the federal government would voluntarily dissolve and the 50 states would be left, and outside of a few agreements here and there for some things that needed to be done on a more national, international basis, the states would all be their own entities. And if I could even get more superpowers, whatever, I would dissolve all 50 states. And there's like 3,000 counties in this country. And I would say each county should be its own independent entity, totally sovereign, whatnot, and work together with other counties when you want, etc. So my point is, government should be small, it should be limited, and we can talk more about that. Now, there is a passage in the Bible about listening to your government, and the government has a sword for a reason, etc. So there are some things that you probably will disagree with me on, because I'm not a true-blooded conservative in some regards. I have some issues with that, so we can talk about that. But right now I'm trying to talk about building a story. So this fictional town of Garage Logic that I talked about, and now this fictional town of Lake Christian. Lake Christian, you go in the lake and you're baptized and your body is dead at the bottom of the lake, in a figurative sense, mind you. I mean, what really happens is your same body gets up, but you have a new spirit, a new purpose. So what is that purpose? Well, keep in mind, different people have different purposes. I'm wearing a red shirt, and there's 7 colors in the rainbow. Roy G. Biv. Red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and violet. And each of those 7 colors are a fraction of the light that's divided up, that how we see and whatnot. And it gets even more complicated than that. But the point is, I think sometimes God gives different people different visions for a different reason. And just because I am focused on red doesn't mean that people focused on brown or orange or green or whatever shouldn't also be taken seriously. Different people have different gifts, different abilities, different talents. So way back when, I've dreamed about the media business, and I've tried owning and running a sub shop, and I've done some flea market related businesses even lately. I might even put few of those videos I did as kind of a live advertisement up on YouTube at some point. Anyways, so I think we need small business, like we need small government, we need small businesses, and we need, I think people who are Christians should be called to a higher standard. Love your neighbor. Do unto others as you would have done to you. The golden rule. Christ's 2 rules. Love God with all your heart, mind, and soul, and love your neighbor as you love yourself, and all other commandments will hang off of that. Now that's a weighty thing that we can discuss also, but for now at least, it's how are we going to live our life? If you had your magic wand, your time machine, your 3 wishes or whatever, or you could get on a podium and somehow persuade people to do what you think should be done, what would you do different? And when it comes to entertainment, I think that, Christian movies and Christian music, there's nothing wrong with them. I enjoy some of the Christian music and some of the Christian movies, but the problem is sometimes they're not as good as what the mainstream media produces. And gradually over time, things like the gay agenda have worked their way into media, the mainstream media, and the whole socialist government woke stuff. Now maybe there's some good stuff about some of that. I remember watching a TV commercial years ago when I was like 20-ish. I'm 46 now. That maybe it's 25, whatever. But there was a soccer player and a parent, and the parent was going to make the soccer player, I think it was macaroni and cheese, maybe it was a sandwich, whatever, but it was a commercial for some kind of food product. And what I thought was impressive was that, you know, instead of the traditional mom making food for her boy soccer player, it was a dad making food for his girl soccer player. And the whole woke thing has gotten way out of control. But some balance is good. So where am I going with this? Okay, I still, like when I was 11, dream of owning a media company. Now, the way I see it is we need to do several things as Christians, and starting our own small businesses and having friends and families and communities work together towards that end would be a good thing to do. Again, I can talk more about that on another video, but I just want to leave you with this. And I am going to talk more about some of my story ideas before I totally leave you, but this is a point I really want you to focus on. When you're watching media, entertainment, you're looking for something to keep, you know, to spend time, to enjoy the day. How much is too much? You know, on a scale of 1 to 10, or maybe 0 to 10, 0 being X-rated, totally not for the family, the worst of the worst, whatever, and 10 being, you know, the best of the best rated G films. Not everything needs to be a perfect 10, but where do we draw lines on entertainment? And I got more thoughts on that, but let me ask you this. Okay, Noah's Ark. Let's just say, you know, God said he would never flood the world again, and I believe him. There are going to be end times at some point. I don't know the, you know, the when, the where, the how. A lot of people have a lot of theories on those. I don't think that's something that I focus my life on, because if you're all millennial, premillennial, post-millennial, pre-trib, post-trib, Arminian, Calvinist, whatever, look, at the end, we have no control over that aspect of God. We just have to live our lives the best way we can. So, if God were to come to you and say, you're going to be a new Noah. Now, I'm not going to flood the world, but I'm going to create a, well, like Noah. I'm going to have you build a spaceship. And this spaceship is going to be a really big spaceship, and you're going to take some animals, you know, maybe because there's no flood, you don't need to take them all, but you can take some animals to this new planet that I'm going to give you to start human life over. Now, the Earth will still be there, so it's not like everybody who doesn't get on the ship is going to die, but let's say you're the new Noah, and you have to find people and their families to join you, and let's just say that was a big number, like 10,000 or something. You had to find maybe, let's just say, 2,000 adult males, 2,000 adult females who were critical to the missions of the space thing, and then you had, you know, seniors and kids and all that who went along for the ride, and, you know, and you had just enough ability to build a ship that could get up into, you know, somewhere around some other star far enough from Earth. And Earth didn't have the ability to do space travel. You didn't have the ability to do space travel. In fact, the amount of technology and information you could bring with you was limited by the size of the ship and whatnot, and you had to start society over. How would you do it? What would you do differently? You know, and God would give you the ability to kind of set the example, you know, set up a new planet, and, you know, people for generations would follow the example, and hopefully they wouldn't, you know, have a Nimrod, unintended, who decided to disobey God. But forget that aspect. You are the Noah, and you have the ability to recreate civilization. How would you do things differently? And I ask this mostly because, you know, a lot of people think, okay, well, this business does this. Is there a need for this or that or the other thing? And maybe, you know, not every business is meant to be. The reason why some businesses fail, it's a reason. And I know I'm rambling. I'm trying to get a point. Trust me, in future videos this will all make sense. But so when it comes to media, what do you watch? Now, I personally watched Game of Thrones. Now, if you're trying to focus on family-friendly entertainment and you don't want to see that, there's some violence in there, there's a lot of sexual content and some things that I can't recommend for family viewing. But I wanted to see the show because I thought it was a great concept, the medieval times. I didn't really realize it was kind of loosely based on the War of the Roses, a reimagining of it. But anyways, so here's the deal. I like the show. Now, I never watched Harry Potter. I never got into it. I did try watching the first movie, and then like when some of the movies were on, I did see portions of some of the movies, but it had witchcraft in it. Now, some true fundamental Christians won't even watch the 50s TV show with Elizabeth Montgomery called Bewitched. Now, that was clearly a fantasy show. They didn't try to do any real magic, and it was just kind of it was a comedy. It was silly. But the Bible says we avoid magic. Well, how much? I think those are all fair questions, and I don't know if I'm ever going to be successful with a media company or some of the family-friendly entertainment ideas I have, like doing live and local comedy shows and whatnot. But one of the things that I think about, and how would I do fill in the blank, is in particular, now, right now my focus is radio and doing radio dramas. But if I'm successful, I probably won't buy TV stations or movie studios or whatever, but maybe some of my stories get converted into books, movies, TV shows, whatever, some version of them. Maybe not the exact same story retold, but some other aspect of the story, whatever the case. So I obviously want to focus on family friendly, but I don't want to be so uber Christian that I don't get a mainstream audience. I want to start putting good vibes back into the world, like our opposition started putting bad vibes into the world and started trying to mold the world in their image with control of media, the universities, etc., etc. You've all heard the conspiracy theories, if you will, and I'm not even here to argue if they're true or not. I believe some of them are, but anyways, so how much, because I'm doing radio, so nudity really isn't possible, but you're being descriptive of a real situation. How much content that is in the nudity subject do we address? One of the shows I want to do about a retired farm couple who ends up being morning show hosts. Their youngest son, has a child out of wedlock. So is that a subject we want to talk about as Christians? I think it's probably one we should talk about and hopefully discourage people from doing such. And the bugs, they love me. I tell you, I'm delicious. But anyway, seriously, trying to get back on topic and not focus on the bugs too much, is what do you show? How do you show it? I mean, it can be things that are innocent, like, half the human population has breasts. So do the shirts, again, if this was TV or a movie, should the shirts be allowed to show cleavage? How much is too much? Those questions I think are fair questions that we need to ask ourselves if we're producing new content, or if we're just choosing what content are we going to watch. Songs that have swear words or talk about inappropriate things, sexual content or whatever. How much do we listen to? I struggle with that, because if I do radio, I'll probably have some music stations, and what songs do I play? If a popular song has inappropriate lyrics, at what point do I allow or not allow? What point do I allow advertisers? There's a lot of men's health, we'll call it, products advertised on radio and TV. I'm not sure that I want those advertisements. Is that just being immature? I think it's a good question. I think there's extremes when it comes to nudity, and there's extremes to sex. With nudity, there are some cultures in Asia, South America, Africa, and probably other places that, the women run around topless, and it's no big deal because it's the acceptable norm. There are cultures that are primarily Muslim dominated where the women are covered up to, as much as 99%, and they just got a little slash for their eyes so they can see. Both extremes are probably too far either direction, but half the human race looks like this. And what do we do with that? And men are very visual. What do we do with that? The stories on TV, a lot of stories, like the Christmas movies on Hallmark, for instance, and the other channels like try to get on the bandwagon. A lot of them are basically love stories. Boy meets girl, they fall in love, but there's this problem. Somebody moves to a new town or gets a new job, and this situation happens, and they fall in love. Are movies too unrealistic with romance? The concept of there being one true love for everybody, is that true or not? I would say no. I think it's more of a logical process. I think Dr. Harley in Marriage Builders could explain that better than I could. But basically, look, we need to figure out what in our life do we accept, what do we expect, and we need to know where the limits are and how we want to influence society. And that's the thing I'm thinking about with my stories. And it's a passion of mine. When it comes to sexual content, I think in general the world has gone awry, and I think sex has become much more of a thing than it should be. Sex is supposed to be a natural, beautiful thing that God gave us for a man and a wife to explore in a personal setting, and I think that's how it should be only. I don't think having a lot of sex with a lot of people is a good thing. I think that being in a committed marriage relationship and probably not having as much sex as the culture in the world tell you should have, probably also a good thing. Well, I'm not going to argue what you should or shouldn't do again. I'm just going to try and convince you that this is what I believe, and maybe we should look at it. When it comes to all of world history and why we do what we do as a species, the human race, and the political history and whatnot, everything has an origin. People believe what they believe for a reason. I think we need to examine those things and figure out what works and what doesn't, and not just throw the baby out with the bathwater. Okay, again, I'm trying to be concise, but there's so much I want to explain. No mind meld is optional for me at this point. Maybe there will be in the future. I'm kidding. Anyways, so here's the deal. Think about this. You are the new Noah. How would you reform culture? When you're living your life, what do you watch on TV? What do you listen to on the radio? What is and is not acceptable? If you had help, or you were helping in writing new content, where would you draw the line? And I'm going to even throw this out. One of my, probably a fantasy that will probably never happen, but it sure be cool if it did. Where I grew up in Minnesota, halfway between Minneapolis and Chicago in Wisconsin, is something called Wisconsin Dells. There's a bunch of water parks and attractions, and it's a big thing in the summer in Minnesota, Wisconsin, Illinois, and probably surrounding states as well. If you're not from that area, you may have never heard of it, but look it up. It's quite a cool little town, but I would love to have my own theme park, water park. I would love to create a company that is as big as Disney. Maybe not now because they're falling apart, but, in days gone by, years gone by, they weren't always big, but they grew big, and they were a big family name, family-friendly entertainment name, and a family name too, but, I would love to have a theme park, a water park, but how much do we allow when it comes to the suits? What is allowed? And if you're a Christian business, do you just allow anything? Do you allow topless bathing? Do you require those swimming burqa things? Where do you draw the line? And those are things I think need discussion. Anyways, I probably went longer than I should. There's a whole bunch of things I'd love to talk about. I'd love to talk to you about more of my history and my ideas. Hopefully I have a chance to do that over the coming days. I hope you had a good day. You have a picnic and be always jovial.